Day 2 of Baltimore Ravens training camp officially over, and Rashod Bateman starred. We talk about how he made an impact, Stephen A. Smith's comments about John Harbaugh, and a lot more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you as always on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today on this Taco Tuesday and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. Free and available for you on all podcasting platforms. So in video form on YouTube, you can like and subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on, and in audio form wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Be sure to follow along and subscribe over there as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sports stop sportsing like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. This is FanDuel.com to get started. We're back here with Sam and Joku of the Ravens Talk podcast. Sam, it's been a little bit since we talked. I know not a ton has happened, but what has happened is Baltimore Ravens football is officially back, training camp in full swing, and it feels so good to have football back.
Man, I've been waiting for this day since the end of the AFC Championship game. Just another opportunity to get back in there and look at how these guys have improved and what their mindset is going into a 2024 season that looks like it has a kind of redemption arc, so to speak. At least that's what I'm getting from John Harbaugh so far this season.
Yeah, really everybody, even just during OTAs and minicamp when those guys were at the podium, Sam, it really felt like they were talking about how the AFC Championship game still lingers with them. They still think about it. They're using it as motivation, and I think rightfully they should be because of how disappointing that year ended. But day 1 of training camp was on Sunday. Obviously, day 2 was on Monday. One of the big stories is Lamar Jackson, who we know he's getting his shrimp Alfredo illness out of the way early here, which, again, in all seriousness, hopefully he's okay. He's feeling better. The illness, John Harbaugh, he was not at practice again on Monday. And again, no really updates on that. It was, he'll be back when he's back when he's feeling better. I know, we don't really know what that illness is, but hopefully he'll be back at some point. But that doesn't mean that the other quarterbacks aren't getting some working with these receivers, Josh Johnson, Devin Leary, Emory Jones. And the big story of day 2, Sam, was Rashod Bateman. And it was a downpour at practice. And Rashod Bateman was hauling in pass after pass. And I think this is exactly what you wanted to see. If you're a Ravens fan, if you're a member of the Ravens, even if you're Rashod Bateman, this arc of, all right, hitting off with a bang in training camp and getting off to a fast start, I think that's what everybody needed here from him.
Yeah, and if you really look back at his career, he hasn't had any of these days, even in training camp. I mean, he hasn't really been the guy to flash and show you something. He's pretty much been the steady receiver who you can rely on, at least in the early portion of training camp. This is a development, a great development if you're a Ravens fan who's been on the fence of whether or not Rashod Bateman is going to be that 1 or 2 receiver for the Ravens. I think he's slowly answering those questions. Now, it is training camp. I don't put too much stock in the training camp because I've been fooled before by these receivers who have flashy plays in the camp and then onto the preseason, the regular season, and become no-shows. But Rashod Bateman's skill set speaks for himself. It's just one of those things where he needs to get acclimated with Lamar Jackson. And even though Lamar Jackson wasn't on the field today, it's nice to see that he's really turning into a dominant receiver, especially with John Harbaugh giving him his signature seal of approval after the camp today.
Yeah, that was big. And I think, to me, I don't know if it has any correlation to you, Sam, but it almost feels like Isaiah Likely, the first couple years of his career, where during training camp, the preseason, he was mainly working with the twos. And so that wasn't throwing with Lamar, it was throwing with some of the backups, obviously Tyler Huntley and some other guys. And we're all just like, all right, this is great, but can that connection keep up? And of course, we know it did. We know the connection is absolutely there. But Bateman's getting into a rhythm early. And I think even if it's not Lamar, like you mentioned, just getting that rhythm is really going to help him and just be able to get Lamar. It's almost like a fast start for Bateman. Mm-hmm. Now, Lamar will come in. We know what Lamar is doing, and that's big. But that one play, and if you've seen the play of the day from training camp, Bateman literally goes down to the ground, plucks the ball off of his shoelaces. His skill set, Sam, is just so enticing and so intriguing. And I think it's honestly shocked a lot of people how disappointing it's been for him. And health obviously has played a really huge part in that, just him not being able to be on the field. But to me, them giving him this role, them having this confidence in him. To me, this doesn't work if the Ravens aren't more balanced this season. Because again, and I know you and I have talked about this, if your name is not Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, or Marquise Brown in this Ravens offense, you're getting what, 2 to 4 targets a game, 2 to 5 targets a game. Bateman needs more opportunities. He needs more targets, but of course he first needs to prove that he deserves them. And again, this is a great start to doing that.
Yeah, and the Ravens have had their propensity not to give guys chances, especially when they've shown flashes. But Rashod Bateman has to be the guy to get things going. You mentioned that he plucked that ball off the ground. Lamar Jackson isn't the most accurate passer. I mean, he's a good passer. He's getting better. But there are times when he's throwing the ball and it's hitting close to the dirt, and you need a guy that can go out there and get it. And Rashod Bateman has that skill set. Zay Flowers, even though he's amazing and really I'm very high on him this year, he doesn't have that skill set. No one really has that skill set on the roster, but Rashod Bateman does. And if you can put it together, it could be a big year for him.
Yeah, and I get it's just even like expanding the catch radius, his catch zone, and the ability where not every throw, again, Lamar throwing on the run, maybe the ball slips out of his hand. And again, it's him being able to go out there, extend for balls, not obviously just away from him, but if they're down, if they're up, going out there and being able to earn that trust with Lamar, it's going to be so big. So to have Bateman have the start that he has, obviously he talked to the media. He said he's feeling great. The foot is fine. There's no setback or any lingering thing there. It feels like this could be the setup of a really good year. But again, the number one thing, Sam, and we both know it, he has to stay healthy and on the field. But also we talk about some of the standouts from camp on day 2. The secondary was really a couple of guys, new Ravens, made big plays, both Nate Wiggins and Eddie Jackson. Eddie Jackson had an interception and would have gone for a pick 6. And he spoke to the media, said it felt like a perfect fit in Baltimore, felt like home. Obviously, he has a ton of connections to these guys, Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, Roquan Smith. I can go on and on and on with either be the South Florida, Alabama, Chicago Bears. And then Nate Wiggins also, he had an interception. He kind of used his arms and his length to get in front of a receiver, pluck a ball out of the air. We know how important Marlon Humphrey is, and he looked really good on day 1 by all accounts. Brandon Stevens, a big part of this defensive secondary as well. But to have 2 new guys come in and make that impact already, people are already excited for these 2 guys, and they're certainly adding to that.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm very shocked Eddie Jackson wasn't on the team. It took until the first day of training camp to get a guy like Eddie Jackson, though he struggled in Chicago. Who hasn't struggled in Chicago if your name not Roquan Smith? So having a guy of that talent come into Baltimore to fulfill that DB role and then have others come in. You have Nate Wiggins, a guy who, even though he has a slender frame, his ability to accelerate at the point of attack when the ball is coming his way, and maybe he's a couple of yards shy, a couple of inches shy of getting to that point. He has the acceleration to get there. It's almost not even fair. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind is the old Breaking Bad scenario when the guy's saying, you can't keep getting away with this. That's not fair. You can't keep getting away with this. Getting these guys in for dirt cheap, and he's going to make an impact. I expect Eddie Jackson to come in and fit right in to fulfill that Geno Stone role, and Nate Wiggins. I mean, the sky's the limit. He's a rookie, but I expect the impact from him as well. I mean, this DB room, this time last year, I was not as confident as I am now. This could really be the shining star of this roster this year.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it more in the final part of the show, but the Ravens have just gone on this like adding defensive back tear after everybody, and I know myself, Sam, I was pounding the table, shouting from the rooftops, this team needs a third safety. They need it. And then they go out there, Eddie Jackson, and then obviously Darryl Worley, who we'll mention as we move on through the show here. But another guy who's really intriguing, a player that I don't know a lot of people expected to have the impact he did last year, was Nelson Aguilar, and he is already off to a fast start, got in front of Marlon Humphrey for a catch, made another sliding grab. He's getting a bit of a promotion this season, moving from that 4 role to that 3 role, and him is a veteran, a steady guy. Obviously, he made, his impact last season, both on and off the field, just as a leader in general, was huge. And they're going to need him more on the field this season with Odell Beckham Jr. gone and more targets to go around in general in that room. But to me, he's a great mentor to have for guys like Zay and Rashod and even Tez Walker. And to me, he's a player that could be like an underrated X factor for how this team performs on offense this year.
Oh, yeah, you hit the nail right on the head there. That is exactly what he is. I mean, the knock on Nelson Aguilar, let's be honest, has been that he has trouble catching the football. He wasn't bad last year with that. I mean, other than that, he's a first-round talent, and I expect him to fit right in. That's one of the reasons why I wasn't too upset about having a guy like Odell Beckham leave the roster is because Nelson Aguilar stepped up in a big way. And just like Rashod Bateman, you have to give these guys opportunities. This is the perfect year to do it. You have a cap space issue where you have a big signing like Lamar Jackson taking up a lot of that cap. You need these cheaper guys on these smaller deals to come in and make impact plays. And I expect Nelson Aguilar to fit right in with that.
Yeah, and it's really big too because Lamar and Nelson do have that chemistry together. And it's a year for them, especially in year 2 of Todd Monken's offense, where Mark Andrews attested to this, where it's just like last year was a feeling out period almost. And this year it's like they have more of a plan of what they want to do. They have more time to execute that plan and kind of hone in on it during the training camp weeks and the preseason weeks. So that's going to be huge. But also on the defensive side of the ball, I know a lot of people do have concerns about the pass rush and how that group could perform this season. Jadeveon Clowney now in Carolina. They do get Kyle Van Noy back, but it's going to be, can Lafe Owe have that breakout season? Can David Ojabo stay on the field? And can he have some level of a breakout year? But as Lafe Owe apparently has been looking pretty good so far in training camp, Sam, being active in the backfield, getting involved, and blew up a couple runs, had nice rushes. How important is it for the Ravens that Owe maybe, dare I say, a Justin Madubuike type leap, that he has something like that this year?
Oh, it'll be huge. I mean, you have a guy like David Ojabo. There's a reason why they drafted this guy. I mean, he's phenomenal. Same with the Odafe Oweh. These guys have the talent to get it done. With the roster such as this, with the Ravens who are always thinking about Super Bowls, always thinking about hoisting the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the season, it's very hard to have patience with these guys. But you got to remember, these guys are young guns coming in, trying to make an impact. So try and give these guys a chance to make plays. And you're starting to see the fruits of the Ravens' labor with David Ojabo. If he can come in and have the type of success that just Justin Madubuike had in his 3rd year, supplant what they lost with Jadeveon Clowney, it'll be huge. There are question marks with the pass rush, of course, but you have guys who you brought in 3rd year, 4th year guys that can come in and really make that next step and possibly create the type of nightmares that Zachary Orr envisions for his defense.
Yeah, and speaking of Kyle Van Noy, he ended up getting in the backfield as well, and he got a nice high five from Chuck Smith. So they're working on all cylinders right now. But speaking of a welcome to the NFL moment, I mean, there are a bunch of guys who have it's different for everybody. Tez Walker apparently yesterday in practice, Sam, ran over the middle of the field and ran into a wall that is known as Roquan Smith. And talk about a welcome to the NFL moment. I'm sure maybe if he goes on a show one time and he's asked that, maybe it is. Yeah, I learned who Roquan Smith really was on the 2nd day of training camp. But we talked about this a little bit after the draft, and we had post-draft shows, you and I. But Tez performing really well in OTAs, really well in minicamp, hopefully continuing that. Have your expectations changed for him, and has your excitement level maybe gotten higher with how good he's looked so far?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that he'd come in and possibly be that X factor, maybe that 2 or 3 deep shots per game type of guy. But if he's willing to go in the middle and try it with Roquan Smith, although it didn't work out too well, the fact that he has that, hey, I'm going to be that guy to come in and you're going to trust me between the numbers, something that they didn't really have with Hollywood Brown, a guy with let's say a slightly similar skill set, that's huge. So the more Tez Walker gets comfortable with this offense, the more Todd Monken will have confidence in having him on the field, and the more chances he'll have to make plays. I mean, this team is loaded with playmakers, but these sexy skill sets, I would say, makes it enticing to see what they can do. So I'm hoping for the best for Tez Walker. He seems like a nice kid, and with his skill set, possibly this could be a match made in heaven for the Ravens and Tez Walker.
Yeah, 100%. And I forgot to mention also with the pass rushers, both Justin Madubuike and Travis Jones had really good days. So some other notes from day 2. Rasheen Ali also had a good day. We know he's going to be more of a factor with Keaton Mitchell coming and kind of trying to have. And I know that is your guy. Let's talk about him for a second here, because I know you were kind of all over him. And someone that I think can have an impact while Mitchell is on the road to recovery. It might be a sneaky, because I don't think a lot of people are talking about him right now, Sam. But I feel like when we get to the season, maybe even in preseason, he gets more work in. Ali could be a guy that maybe splits that second back row with Justice Hill before Keaton comes back a little more down the middle than people might think right now.
Yeah, I mean, all he needs is a couple of plays to show what he's capable of. Everything I saw on film makes me think he's going to love this style of offense. Running backs are going to love this offense regardless, and that's one of the reasons why I think Derrick Henry's signing is a little under the radar for some reason. But Ali's another guy who can come in and really, really take this team by storm, and they're going to have a very interesting problem once Keaton Mitchell gets back, because Mitchell's skill set speaks for itself. He has to be in there But Justice Hill has performed well over the last couple of seasons, and if Ali gets another chance or two to make a big play, we could be looking at a four-headed monster heading towards December.
Man, and with as much as this Ravens team runs the ball, they certainly could use everybody they can have in that backfield. So another good day of training camp for the Ravens. Also, Trenton Simpson making some plays there as well. But coming up with the second part of the show, we're going to be talking about Stephen A. Smith. He had some comments for John Harbaugh after Harbaugh went to bat for Lamar Jackson on Sunday, and they were interesting to say the least. So be sure to stay tuned. We got a lot to get to here on the show. First, this show is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why I have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And I've had a ton of great experiences over on LinkedIn, whether it's finding jobs, networking, connecting. LinkedIn is certainly the place to be. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows small businesses are wearing so many hats, might not have the time and resources to hire. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We are back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku still talking with you on this Tuesday edition of the show. Now, Sam, we've heard a lot of comments about Lamar Jackson over the course of this offseason, the course of his career. I know it gets exhausting, it gets tiring, and we hear it almost every single week. And it's just like this big thing. John Harbaugh ended up defending Lamar on Sunday, went on this huge ramble, rant, speech, whatever you want to call it, said that he believes Lamar is going to be the best quarterback, in the NFL, and all this different stuff about how all that good talk is candy. That's all candy. But the negative stuff, he pays attention, and he even uses that as a shit for him. And he says Lamar sees it and all this criticism, this, that, and the other. Well, Stephen A. Smith went on ESPN on Monday and said, first of all, he said he'd like John Harbaugh to stop making up narratives. Said what he said was a lie. He's like, what criticism? What Lamar Jackson gets criticized? He said that nobody has criticized, if Lamar is worth the money or not. No one has criticized his ability as a quarterback. He says the only thing that's been criticized is he hasn't won a Super Bowl, which to me, Sam, I cannot sit here and think Stephen A. Smith is this out of touch or this unaware of what is going on, particularly because he himself was the one when we were talking about that Week 5 game against Pittsburgh. The receivers dropped, 7-8 passes in that game, and a lot of them were their fault. It wasn't really Lamar on those throws. They were there and they dropped them. Stephen A. Smith was the guy to say, is Lamar Jackson worth the money? And now he's out here saying, well, no one has said that before. Who's ever said that? It was a very, I'll call it again, an interesting response to a head coach defending his quarterback, which plenty of people do. And quarterbacks across the league get criticized a lot less than Lamar do.
Yeah, it's kind of strange, but at this point, it is what it is. I knew as soon as the AFC Championship game ended the way it did that I was going to have to deal with another year of this. Lamar Jackson's a 2-time MVP. There are not many out there who can say that. In fact, there's only 2 quarterbacks who are multiple-time MVPs that are not in the Hall of Fame. One's Patrick Mahomes and one's Lamar Jackson. I mean, and the fact that I look at these lists, listing the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, and Lamar Jackson barely cracks the top 5, and you got guys like Joe Burrow, and you got guys like Josh Allen, who's a turnover magnet, and it's very difficult to sit here and listen to it on a daily basis, in which I have to do because this is part of our job. But to hear Stephen A. Smith make that comment, he's out of touch. And maybe he's trying to defend himself because he is, like you said, one of the ones who have been very critical of Lamar Jackson. But the fact here is this. Lamar's the top 3 quarterback in this league. I'll put Patrick Mahomes at 1, and then it's a toss-up, really. Lamar Jackson is that good. And you could talk about his ability to win in the postseason, and yeah, they were 7 points away from being able to do that to reach the Super Bowl. But other than that, the entire narrative with Lamar Jackson should be squashed, but it's not. You got guys like Mark Schlereth, who's gone on the show multiple times, well, not the show, but on the social media multiple times and defend his criticism of Lamar Jackson. It's just unwarranted. There's too many facts out there to diminish the type of success that Lamar has had. So I think Stephen A. Smith's comments is totally out of base, out of touch with reality, to be honest. And anyone else who's making the criticism of Lamar Jackson at this stage in his career coming off the MVP, he's the MVP of the league this year. So if you had anything negative to say besides the fact that he got to win the Super Bowl, which is warranted in some respects, then there's really nothing I can say to you.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Look, Mahomes, we probably can all agree, is the number one quarterback in the league. I don't think anybody's disputing that. And that's not a knock on Lamar. It's just Mahomes is that good. And then you're right, it is a toss-up. I personally have Lamar too, but it really feels like it's like a 2 through 4 battle, Sam, between Lamar, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow. Like everybody has them ranked anywhere from 2 to 4 there. But yes, his playoff performances in some aspects can be criticized. And I'm not saying Lamar is just like absolved of all criticism and can't, he's this guy that can't be touched. Like, of course, when he deserves to be criticized, of course he will be criticized. But the thing is, he gets criticized for things that he does not deserve to be, particularly because, and I've said this everywhere, he is a quarterback. He's an eye test quarterback, where this Ravens offense is not set up for him to go 25 of 30 for 350 passing yards and 4 touchdowns every game. That's just not what this is. This is a run-first team. Lamar can go 13 of 20 for 180 passing yards and 1 passing touchdown. The Ravens can win by 30 points. That's just how good he is, and that's how good this team is. He does within the offense what he is supposed to do. And again, it doesn't matter to me, Sam, if he runs for 6 or throws for 6, if he gets a 20-yard game with his arm or a 20-yard game with his legs. It all counts the same. Like, I don't think he should be discounted because he's a quarterback that can also use his legs. He's a good passer. He's a good runner. He's a dual threat guy. But I feel like Lamar gets criticized for his rushing ability, and it's almost looked at as a bad thing when it should be looked at as a great thing.
Great thing, yeah. And it's going to be one of those cases where it's just going to keep going until he wins, okay? So the Ravens better get the job done this year because I'm tired of hearing about it. But you're right. I mean, he's a dual threat quarterback. These rushing yards he's getting should be kind of the same. Even just extending plays with his legs, something that not many QBs in the league, in the history of the league, are able to do. So, and you saw the way the offense performed in training camp so far with him absent. It's completely different than when he's on the field because he's just so dynamic. He causes defensive coordinators and defenders themselves to have to think a half a millisecond longer than they need to decide what's going to happen. And by then it's too late.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too. He just has so much gravity to him, even if he's not really impacting a play. Like, you just have to be aware of where Lamar is at all times. And that's why, to your point about Derrick Henry, why I think it's going to be such a good pairing, because there's no disrespect to Gus Edwards, no disrespect to J.K. Dobbins, right? But Derrick Henry is a better running back than those two, and Derrick Henry has a level of gravity to him. Lamar Jackson has a level of gravity to him. If you're a defensive player and you're trying to, all right, we're going to sell out to stop Lamar, we're going to sell out to stop Derrick Henry, which one of those guys do you sell out for? Because if you make the wrong decision, it can go very badly for you very quickly. So I know that's probably what you love about the pairing too.
Oh, man, it's... And when I start my show up here, it's going to be just me salivating in the mouth at the design that I'm sure Todd Monken has in place to get these two guys involved. If you're pinning your hopes on containing both Lamar and Derrick Henry in a single play, you already lost. You have to guess who's going to get the ball and attack. That's really your only option, because when you're defending Derrick Henry when he's at Tennessee, they're sending guys, 2, 3, 4 guys at Derrick Henry to slow him down. You're telling me you're going to decide to send 3, 4 guys to Derrick Henry? You want to read option play and Lamar Jackson's just going to run for 60 yards? That's really what's about to happen with this offense, unless a guru defensive coordinator, maybe Steve Spagnuolo, has a plan come week 1. But I just don't see how, the numbers-wise, you have the talent to stop both of these guys in their prime at the same time. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's almost like, again, when Lamar and Gus were in the same backfield together, the defense is probably always leaning a little more towards Lamar, because you know that's like, not that Gus isn't good or anything, but it's like, all right, that's Lamar Jackson we're talking about. Now with Derrick Henry, it's like, oh, that's Lamar Jackson we're talking about, and that's Derrick Henry we're talking about. So it's like, where do you go? Because if you bring in the heavy personnel, well, Lamar Jackson can just get to the sideline and go out and score. If you bring in the personnel to stop Lamar and that speedy personnel, well, Derrick Henry can bowl them over. And that's, to me, where it's like the yin and the yang of everything. So I'm really excited about that. But one more point about Stephen A. here, Sam, is Spencer Schultz put out a great tweet just kind of highlighting, because Stephen A. said, well, got to win the Super Bowl, And that is true. Not wrong. But Spencer said, look, some of these other quarterbacks, talking Hall of Famers, Steve Young won when he was 33. Peyton Manning, he won when he was 30. Kurt Warner, 28. Brett Favre, 27. Aaron Rodgers, 27. Lamar's 27 right now. And you also have, like, all right, Peyton won in his 9th season. Steve Young was his 9th. Aaron Rodgers, 6th. And then you have Brett Favre 6 as well. Lamar Jackson is going into his 6th season as the starter. It almost feels like he's right on track here. And it's really hard to win. The greats should be able to do it at some point. But we're still kind of going through year after year for Lamar. Lamar's in his prime. Lamar has a long way to go. And I do feel like when it's like, right, he has to win the Super Bowl, it feels like he's being talked about like it's like a sure thing he's never going to win one. And like, that's the conversation around him where it's like, oh, he hasn't won a Super Bowl. He's never going to be able to do it. And that to me isn't fair in its own aspect. Yeah.
And really the content, the conversation is Lamar Jackson cannot win a Super Bowl with his skill set. That's the basis of it. And every year he doesn't, it further feeds that narrative. But the truth of the matter is, Lamar Jackson's too good of a player to not win a championship. He's going to win one. I don't know when it's going to happen. I thought it was going to happen last year. It may happen this year, but history says that aside from a couple of quarterbacks, he's too talented to not win one. So that narrative that he's unable to win one is just false because one, he makes the postseason almost every year. And just giving yourself a chance to make it is a fight in itself. So the fact that he's going to make it every year gives him credence to possibly win it. The fact that he's dominant in the regular season prior to the postseason lets us know that he has the ability to score points at will whenever he needs to, and his team as a whole has the talent to do so. So it's just a matter of when. It's not even a matter of if anymore. I know it's nice. The narrative is great to point out that he hasn't won one, but we're really just on a countdown that we have no answer to. When is Lamar Jackson going to win it? Hopefully it's this year for Ravens fans, but it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, I am so hopeful. And for him, you're exactly right, where we saw it literally last season. The Ravens were the best team in the regular season. They dominated everybody. And then they weren't the best team in the playoffs. And if you're not the best team in the playoffs, you don't win the Super Bowl. So even if you just – and it feels like, Sam, the Ravens just – they're better as an underdog. Like they like being the wild card. They like that being that sneaky team who they don't have the target on their back. They're going after the targets on other people's backs. And I mean, we saw it in, when to talk about, bye weeks, even 2006, when there was that game they lost to the Colts in the divisional, and then obviously 2019 and this year, 2023, a lot of heartbreak. But if you want to go the 2012, 2013 route, heartbreak in 2023, hopefully it's a nice redemption story in 2024. We're continuing to talk about the Ravens, though, in the final part of the show. We'll talk about the Eddie Jackson edition and also the Ravens. They keep adding defensive backs now. They're just in a zone. So stay tuned. We'll talk about that coming up next here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a booster or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. So for the MLB, Gunnar Henderson, obviously in that MVP conversation. If you want those odds, head over to FanDuel. Or for the Ravens Chiefs, so close to that matchup. Ravens open up with 2.5-point underdog to the Chiefs. So if you want that line, go over to FanDuel as well. Head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. We are back with Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Sam Njoku still chopping it up with you here. Sam, again, a lot of people were, I think, were a little nervous about the third safety spot before Eddie Jackson came in. Geno Stone leaves, and I'm a big Rodarius Washington believer. I think he's a really solid player that, again, health has not been on his side over the course of his career. But going into the year with, again, injury-plagued guy going into his third season, I believe it is now, an undrafted rookie in Bo Braden, a seventh-round pick in Sanusi Kane as your depth, was always going to be a little dicey. So the Ravens go in there, they bring in Eddie Jackson, who is a very talented player and someone who we know, 2018 Eddie Jackson, all-pro, Pro Bowler. Eddie Jackson's a two-time Pro Bowler, has the connections. Felt like it was some level of a match made in heaven. I know some people wanted a Justin Simmons, and it would have been awesome. But I do feel like for the third safety role, Eddie Jackson is probably the best the Ravens could have done, considering Justin Simmons probably, one, wants to be a starter, and two, probably wants a lot more money than Eddie Jackson did, and the Ravens just don't have that much money to operate with. So what were your reactions to the signing, and how do you like the fit?
I love the fit. I'm not going to be honest. I prefer Eddie Jackson in some regards over Justin Simmons. This thing that Eddie Jackson can do that I think Justin Simmons either can't do or hasn't done in quite a while. And one of the things is that being a ball hawk safety, just being able to be where he needs to be on the field, just gravitating towards the ball, just being that third guy on the field would be great because that gives Colin Hamilton the opportunity to be where he's comfortable at the line of scrimmage. We can have it there. So having a guy like Eddie Jackson is just huge for the Ravens. I mean, I cannot even begin to say how great it is just to have a veteran presence, just to have another guy, another guy who can read defenses and really figure out what's going on before the play is snapped. So I have no qualms about having Eddie Jackson there. I still don't know how Eric DeCosta does this every single season, just pulls a Pro Bowler out of his butt on an annual basis. And I am almost positive he's going to be a very welcome addition to the defense and making plays for them throughout the rest of the 2024 season.
Man, and this is just how the Ravens have to operate, isn't it? Like with Lamar on his big deal, with other guys signed to big contracts too, it's boy, you got to hit on your veteran signings and you got to hit on your draft picks. And I know they signed a bunch of veterans last year. I'm not sure we're going to see that many veterans signed this time around, but just to have this and the depth, people who maybe don't like the signing as much, and I really thought Sam was a pretty positive reaction overall to Eddie Jackson being signed, but I did see some things about, this he can't tackle and this, that, and the other, and this, which again, his tackling has declined over the course of his career, but they're not using him as a starter per se. Like obviously in the event an injury happens, that changes the conversation. But if in an ideal world here, you can use Eddie Jackson in tandem with Marcus Williams, in tandem with Kyle Hamilton. The biggest part of this to me is you move Kyle Hamilton around now. That was a big part of why I wanted a third safety, was because Hamilton was going to be limited in some aspects of what he could do this season if they didn't have another guy they could trust back there, whether it was Darius Washington or was somebody else. It was going to limit him, and just like it limited Minkah Fitzpatrick last year for the Steelers. They had to use him in a role that just wasn't him, and now they have addressed that, and the Ravens are going to be in that situation, but they figured it out. But for Eddie Jackson as a third safety, like that's incredible. Like to have a tandem of Hamilton, Williams, Jackson together and not have to rely on Eddie Jackson for a full complement of snaps and have him be your quote unquote like depth piece. That's a pretty, almost the definition of embarrassment of riches.
It's kind of nuts. Every time I think about it, it's just like, okay, so they have Kyle Hamilton, they have Marcus Williams. Okay, now they got this guy in, and then we have like 7 great cornerbacks on the roster who can make a play at any given moment. I mean, someone's not going to make the team. I mean, how are they going to get all these guys in here? But that's a great problem to have, especially in July. Get these guys on the field, see what they can do, see if they can adapt to Zachary Orr's defense. And man, I feel sorry for the other teams because you thought that there was a chance that this defense could take a step back, but I just don't see it, especially the way they performed in the first couple of days of training camp. It looks like they're going to increase their productivity, if that's even possible, in 2024.
Yeah, it's huge. And to your point about roster construction, I mean, I put out kind of the depth as it is that Baltimore has. And I would assume, and again, this is way too early roster prediction stuff, but I assume they maybe keep like 6 corners and 5 safeties or something along those lines. They have their 5 safeties, in my opinion, with Hamilton, Williams, Jackson, Washington, and Darryl Worley, who I'm going to classify as a safety for now, even though they can play both. But then you have the corner spots, and I think it's going to be obviously Marlon, Brandon Stevens, Wiggins, Arthur Millette, TJ Tampa. And I think it's going to be a competition for that last spot between Pepe Williams and Jalen Armour-Davis, 2 guys who I know there was a lot of hope for when they got drafted. Obviously, it hasn't worked out, mostly health-wise for both of them. Out of those 2, do you have a preference of who you'd like to see? All right, let me hear. Who is it?
Jalen Armour-Davis, without question. Right. Yes. I do like Pepe Williams. He does have some type of dog in him. He reminds me a little bit of the smaller DB. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I think, was it Corey Davis? I can't remember. It was a small DB that really made an impact. But
a while ago, Corey Ivy?
Corey Ivy, there it is.
Yeah, there it is.
Thank you. Yeah, so he was a guy who came in and he really had that dog in him a little bit, but wasn't able to pull it all together. I feel like that's the type of thing again with Pepe Williams. Jalen Armour-Davis, it's been all health. I mean, when he's on the field, when he's practicing, speaking with coaching staff, speaking with other players, I'll hear nothing but great things about him. He's the guy that you need to watch out for. This is the season. This camp is very big for him. If he can put it together, I think he makes the roster. He's just too good. He has the frame. He's 6'1", 200 pounds. You can put him anywhere on the field. If he just gets it together, stays healthy throughout this camp, I think he's the guy that makes it.
Yeah, and honestly, it just depends on otherwise what Baltimore needs is a skill set. Like, they have so many guys who can do it both, like play safety and play corner, move inside and outside. They don't have to be as worried about, who's the backup slot, because they have like 3 backup slots in one if they really need, because guys can move all over the place. So Armour Davis has just been this, like, it's this boatload of potential that really just has not worked out whatsoever. But if he can stay healthy, like you said, Sam, I like his chances to make the roster. Now, Daryl Worley did resign, felt like an inevitability in a lot of different ways. Honestly, was surprised it didn't happen sooner, but I guess Baltimore's wanted to get underway with training camp and everything. He was on that roster carousel pretty much the entire season. He was called up from the practice squad, cut, put back on a practice squad, called up from the practice squad. That whole thing happened. But I think they really like his versatility. They like his leadership as a vet in that room. And again, this just did not shock me whatsoever.
No, it didn't. And if you're versatile, you're going to make your way onto this roster. There's just no way about it. If you could play multiple positions, Bill Belichick, John Harbaugh, those two guys love versatile players. And having a guy like him on the field just makes it way easier for Zach Orr to scheme things up. I mean, if you're down a safety, you could plug him in. If you're down a corner, you could plug him in. He might not be as talented as the other guys, but he has the veteran presence. He has the IQ. He can be a guy that you could plug in during a dire situation, or, maybe special teams, or even on a dime play, or having 5 DBs out at one time. There's plenty of opportunities to get this guy on the field and making plays, and having the ability to have him carousel around really maybe brought a fire in him that he can bring to training camp and possibly make this roster outright.
Yeah. Would you say Baltimore has the best secondary in the NFL now?
Oh, it's without question. I mean, it's them and then everybody else. Now, who would you put at number 2? I don't know, but maybe the 49ers, maybe. I don't know. There's other contenders out there, but man, the versatility, the talent, of this group. I mean, Kyle Hamilton's by far the best safety in the league, in my opinion. You got Marcus Williams, the guy who has flashes, hasn't really put it together for them because of, again, health, but he's still shown us what he can do in previous seasons on another team. But you got Marlon Humphrey, a guy who I think got a lot of flack, but again, health concerns impeded him. It's very hard to be a great DB in this league if you're not fully healthy. Marlon Humphrey now has that health on his side. Brandon Stevens, the guy who's come in and really showed up that CB2 role. Then you have Nate Wiggins, a guy who can really come in and steal the show. He might be starting on half the teams in this league just coming in to the season. But with this roster, he's looking more of like a backup to start and then maybe get some serious burn later on in the season. And then TJ Tampa, we mentioned Jalen Armour Davis. So, yeah, this team is loaded with DBs, and it's going to be very difficult for Zach Roy to get them all on the field, but it's a great problem to have.
Yeah, great problem. And the Ravens love running there, whether it be 3 corner rotations, multiple DB packages, and they certainly now have the talents to do that in so many different ways this year. And you're right. I don't even know who I'd put at number 2. I can't even think of a team. Maybe I would have put Kansas City if they still had Snead, but
yeah, they don't.
Yeah,
thank God.
I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there now. So Baltimore, they are deep in the secondary. They have stars in the secondary. They're talented there too, and I think it's going to be big. And they need it too, Sam, because you know what? This team has been snake bitten their entire franchise history with cornerback injuries, defensive back injuries. You got to start the year with a lot of guys, and hopefully all of them stay healthy. But I appreciate you hopping on, Sam. Thank you so much for joining me. Please tell people where they can find you and what you're working on as training camp continues to kick off here.
Awesome. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter on the Ravens Talk Podcast. There every day talking Ravens and getting the news out there. Most active on Instagram. You can find me at Ravens Talk Podcast there. Our podcast is starting up next week. We'll have shows throughout the season. We'll have plenty of guests, plenty of players to come in and talk about their how they're feeling towards the beginning of the season, and maybe get some veterans to give us some perspective of what they went through during this time period. So lots and lots of shows to get to, lots of content out there for you Ravens fans. Of course, Kevin R. Striker is the best, but I'm trying to come in there and supplement you a little bit, give you a little more Ravens content for you as the season gets in the way.
Hey, Sam is great at what he does. Be sure to check out his links, of course, will be in the description below. So subscribe, follow him, Instagram, Twitter, the whole 9 yards for more Ravens coverage. Sam, again, appreciate you as always. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you to everybody for tuning in today and listening and watching to Locked On Ravens. Be sure to subscribe video form and audio form for your 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, of course, we'll be covering training camp more, what happened on day 3 and any other Ravens talking points. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.